Welcome to episode 155 of Auto Off Topic. What's up, Brad?
Not too much, Andrew. What's going on with you?
Not too much. Still in the studio here.
Yeah, a couple more episodes probably.
So we did some in between the last episode now. My dad and I worked on my mom's Beetle and did the it's like a wider brake pedal or pedal assembly.
Yeah, I think we talked about you were going to do that.
Yeah, if you've ever driven an old Beetle,
Or honestly, any old European car.
Yeah,
A lot of them have the very small pedal box.
the pedals are really close together. Make it a little tricky. My mom was having trouble with it. My dad was having a little trouble with it. If you have bigger feet, wider feet, plus the plastic throttle pedal was broken.
Yeah, it was
would
actually
flop
broken.
around. Yeah, and like you might go to take your foot off the brake, especially on a hill, because you're like really fast from brake to gas, and you'd like catch the back of the gas pedal
Because the pedal was sitting higher than the brake.
Yeah, so you'd actually end up on the wrong side of it, and then it'd be like kind of annoying. You'd like get caught. So there's like this really nice kit that has an extended. So the whole rod goes through the pedal assembly. If you ever looked at one of these, they're like floor-mounted pedals versus every other car, which is mounted from above.
Yeah, they pivot on the floor versus pivot behind the firewall.
It's just a Porsche and a Beetle and maybe other air-cooled stuff, but
There's a few different cars out there that have that setup. Not very many, but
not very common. So the rod goes through the three pedals, and this rod connects to the clutch cable.
so it's a common pivot point for all three pedals?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's like an aluminum. It's like a cast aluminum thing that bolts to the tunnel. The rod goes through it. The cast aluminum part is where your throttle pedal bolts to. The brake pedal pivots on it and pushes the rod through the firewall. Well, it's technically not a firewall. The front bulkhead
Yeah.
into the master cylinder. And then the clutch pedal works the rod all the way through basically the three pedals.
Is it maybe a firewall? Because there's a gas tank up there.
Oh, yeah, I guess firewall, bulkhead would be correct. All correct answers. But the clutch pedal on these has the clutch rod has a hook, and then the cable has like a hook onto it. And I guess over time that little hook can break off. So you'll be in like stop and go traffic, and the thing will just break off, and you won't have a clutch.
Yeah, because the way you push the clutch in, it pulls the cable against the hook in the way that it like
Pulls forward.
Yeah, it like unbends the loop,
Yeah.
like with pressure over time.
So this one had a newer setup where it was like a brass bushing and a nylon lock nut. You actually just turn the cable 90 degrees and hook it on there. So it's like more secure and positive. And then it's a longer shaft because you put a spacer in there. It spaces the clutch pedal out like 3/4 of an inch towards the outside. So it's literally just enough to give you enough extra space between the gas and between the brake and the clutch.
Yeah, and that lock nut style cable attachment is much more positive too. There's no room for it to move once
Yeah,
it's tightened.
we had to adjust the clutch cable after we did it, but that's super easy on those cars. And then the throttle pedal gets pushed more towards it gets angled more towards the tunnel, and they give you a nicer like roller piece. I've seen custom Beetles where they have the big roller for the throttle pedal.
Mm-hmm.
Basically,
It's
just
like a skateboard wheel.
yeah, it's basically like a smaller version of this, a little tiny skateboard wheel that goes behind a nice aluminum pedal instead of a plastic one, and they put a nice rubber cover over it, and it looks factory once it's all
Yeah,
together.
you would never even know. If you didn't know what the pedals looked like factory, you would never think this was modified.
No, you'd get in it and you wouldn't notice how close they were unless you had driven a stock one.
Yeah.
It did drive a lot better, so that's pretty cool. And everything fit together nice. It took us a couple hours to do it. Mostly, it was the adjusting of because we had to adjust the throttle cable too.
Yep.
But that's
No, it's a really cool setup, and it's going to make it much easier for your father to move it in the garage or drive it himself.
yeah.
And even your mom, who didn't have a problem driving it, is probably going to like it more because it's
Yeah.
going to be more like modern feeling.
Yeah, the throttle cable's a little stiff right now because it has like a return spring that was too weak. Because somebody had like jammed up the throttle spring, so we like adjusted it. So we might have to replace that spring with something not as stiff, but
Right.
it worked pretty well. I mean, it's definitely better than it was. It definitely feels more natural. And it was funny as we test drove it. My dad's like, "Well, did you have to like?" He's like, "Did you like notice it really different?" I was like, "Well, honestly, no, because I drive standard so often. I don't really think about it. I just got in it and drove it."
Every car is different, so you don't even think about it.
Yeah, you just kind of adjust pretty quickly, but it was fine, like stopping on a hill and going.
I'm
So,
sure he noticed it.
yeah. Yeah, and I put there's like a video of it on Instagram of just the difference. But
Yep.
that's about it for Project Car updates so far.
Yeah. Well, we said we're gonna have a lot for the next few episodes, so we got more stuff coming.
You were gonna try. We're actually
The
recording this.
plan this morning was to work. Well, we recorded this in the morning.
Yeah.
So the plan this morning was to do the paint on the Eclipse door, but the weather's not cooperating because
Yeah.
it's like super humid outside and overcast. Which overcast would be good if it wasn't 90-something% humidity.
Yeah.
So
So
you can't really paint outside
we're,
90%.
we're giving you a
humidity.
podcast instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, Brad would have been. Is it DA? What are you doing to the?
Yeah, DAing the door and then spot priming anywhere
It's on the Eclipse.
on the red Eclipse. Yeah, and then painting the actual upper section of the door this time. So unfortunately, it's just gonna have to wait a little bit, but not a big deal. I did get all the parts to do it. Got the paint, got the DA, be able to get it done pretty quickly. Hopefully the humidity will blow off later on today, and we'll be able to get it done later tonight. So we'll see what happens.
All right. So we asked for some listener questions
Yes, we
the
did.
other night. So let's get right into those. We'll start with the Facebook ones. We'll go. I've got reverse order here. We'll do Mary Reeves. How has the car spotting been in Arizona? So this one's for Brad.
I mean, pretty ridiculous. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's just the land of old cars as just normal daily drivers.
Yeah, you kind of talked about the Pavilion show, but I mean, you were going to a car show, but in general, like out in the wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just like I don't even stand out anymore driving an old car.
Yeah.
Like it's because everybody just has old cars.
Right. But you were saying you just see like old air-cooled cars that are just beat up because they're...
Yeah, people still daily drive air-cooled Beetles and Squarebacks and, I mean, Volkswagen things, everything. Just normal daily drivers out there, and they probably buy them for still $1,000 or two, and just drive until they die and buy another one.
Has there been any like Japanese cars that are older that you haven't seen in years out here being driven?
Well, like I said, it was that Cressida wagon that I saw in traffic, and then I saw at the Pavilion show.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of early Camrys, like 90s Corollas, which aren't anything special, but they're just everywhere
Because they just
because
lasted.
they just run and run and run, and if they don't rust, then there's no reason to get rid of them, I guess. But like that really like squared off early 90s Corolla sedan that was ubiquitous here for years but is gone is still pretty ubiquitous out there.
Yeah.
I probably see as many new 1991, 92 Corollas out there as I see like 2015 Kia Fortes here.
Huh.
Like it's kind of ridiculous.
But like old... You said something about a B210 last time, right?
That was at the car show. Yeah.
But you see those like out just driving around?
Not
or-
as common.
or old Datsuns?
Yeah, not as common because a daily driver out there has to pass emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So when a car, like an old carbureted car like that, gets too old, it has a hard time passing emissions.
Especially when they're in that time period of having carbs and having to meet emissions.
Yeah, carbs and smog pumps and catalytic converters.
You have to be really dedicated to it to make
Yeah.
it pass because it's super hard to...
right.
I know guys talk about that with the four-cylinder Raiders.
Yeah, well, in a place like California where everything is smogged back to 75, Arizona it goes by county. So obviously Phoenix is Maricopa County, and because Phoenix is such a big, hub, they have emissions there. So all cars from 1969 and newer have to have passed some sort of emissions.
Oh.
Even
69
though
and
69 wouldn't have smog
Any-
equipment, it still needs to burn clean enough as it did when it was new.
Huh.
If you just have the car as a daily driver. So if you have vintage car insurance, it negates that.
And
'Cause
vintage car plates?
You don't need the plates, just the insurance.
Oh.
Because if you have the insurance,
You can only drive...
you can only drive so many miles a year, so they don't bother testing those cars. So yeah, if you just have a normal everyday driver as an old car, it has to pass emissions, and that makes it a little more difficult out there. So you don't see as many kind of unloved cars.
So it's more common to see stuff from like the late 80s, 90s that's like fuel injected
Oh,
economy
yeah. I mean,
cars.
but again, like I said, you do see still daily driven Beetles and daily driven early 70s Mustangs. The popular stuff that there's a general knowledge of will
Yeah,
still be on the road. But an uncommon car, like a Datsun 1200 sedan, it needs to be a dedicated owner if it's going to be a daily, or it can be a weekend toy because you don't need emissions then.
Yeah. Any early RX-7s?
Not as a rule. I see a lot of FCs in the road still. But no,
Yeah,
I haven't
seen
a
an
lot of
FC
early
on a
cars.
road here in many years, like
Yeah.
other than a
Other
Cars
than like my
copy.
dad's. Yeah.
Yeah, and like for whatever reason, there seems to be. I think we've discussed this. There seems to be a lot of first gen RX-7s around here.
Yeah, because they were parked in the wintertime.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's not a ton of those out there. I don't know if I've even seen one since I've been there.
Hmm.
The one thing I do see a lot of, which hits real home with this podcast, is S10 pickups and
Yeah,
Blazers.
yeah.
They're like cockroaches out there still. One of my neighbors in my complex has like the mintiest GMC S15, what do they call it, a Sonoma.
Something like that.
Yeah, with like it's like tan and metallic brown two-tone with a tan interior. It's gorgeous. Like it's just perfect.
Like one of the Oldsmobile versions of it. You see those?
The Bravadas? No, I don't think so. The Bravadas were late enough.
Was there a Buick version of it?
No, I don't think so. The old Bravada was at the very end of that line. It was only like
Yeah.
2 years, and it had full cladding all around it.
Weird.
I don't think many Bravadas are left because most of them have more complicated electronics. Like they have like crazy fancy interiors and all that stuff would break on them.
Oh, so do you see like early 90s to like early 2000 GM cars? Those must be all over the place too.
Everywhere. Like the Grand Prix and
Yeah,
Luminas and they're just everywhere. Like absolutely everywhere. Because there was a plant not too far away, I think. Wasn't there a plant in Southern California?
Probably.
Plus the GM Proving Grounds was in Phoenix. So there's just a lot of those cars just legitimately everywhere.
That's funny. All right. Let's go to the next question. Gillette Jake. Do you guys often find yourselves recommending older vehicles to non-enthusiasts for daily drivers? My stepmother's O2 Prism is getting pretty rusty, so she's looking for a replacement, even though she loves it. I'm trying to convince her she's better off buying another in really nice shape for the $3,000 instead of spending the same money on a 10-year-old car. I read this earlier. I was thinking about it. I would think it would depend on your climate that you live in, because I don't think you're going to, if you live in the Northeast, another $3,000 Geo Prism, if you manage to find one, is not going to be very nice underneath.
Yeah, probably not.
If you lived in Phoenix, maybe you can find a perfect Geo Prism and you can keep on trucking with a $3,000 car. But
So I find myself recommending an older
Yeah.
car to a lot of people who are not car people, but you have to be careful. You don't want to recommend that a non-car person buy something that's going to require a lot of maintenance. So I'm usually very specific. I would definitely recommend, if you could find a nice Prism, excuse me. If you could find a clean Prism that was like one of the little old lady cars that was garaged every day and wasn't rusty and was $3,000 or less, then yeah, I would highly recommend that because the Prism is just a Corolla. So I do recommend that people like, hey, you don't need to spend $500 a month on a new car. You can just spend $2,000 once and have a maintenance bill maybe twice a year of $500, and your life will be better because you won't have to have that every month car payment. Your insurance will be cheaper, your taxes will be cheaper, everything will be cheaper. So I do recommend that based on finances. But if a car payment's not a big deal to them and they're not a car person, I usually don't recommend it just because A, if it's a friend of mine, that means that we get stuck working on it,
yeah,
which isn't good. B, if it's a friend of mine, I don't want to recommend they buy an older car, and then I get the phone call when it breaks down, and then I'm feel like a jerk because I recommended they buy that car.
it's so inexpensive now to take that $3,000 and lease a newer car. If you're not into cars at all,
Or even something like what I bought. Like I bought like the most car enthusiast version of a non-car enthusiast car.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's a $9,000, $10,000 car. It's like a $200 a month car payment.
exactly. But
No.
you can, if a Geo Prism is their comfort level, then you could go lease a Corolla.
Yeah.
And
Or even the new, was it a Yaris or the IM or whatever it
Yeah.
is, the smaller one? It's probably the same size as that old Prism.
and just every couple of years,
Do it again.
just do it again.
Yeah.
And you're what you're paying for in that lease is, as long as you don't go over the mileage, is you're just paying for the convenience of a new car that doesn't need maintenance.
You're basically paying the depreciation of the car when you are driving the car.
Yeah.
That's all you're paying is the depreciation.
Yeah.
So that you don't get stuck with the selling the car afterwards or being upside down at some point.
It
You
makes-
just literally leasing a car for a long time to me didn't make sense until I thought about non-car people, and I was like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense for non-car people.
It makes a lot of sense for non-car people because it's like when you're done with it, after 2 years, you just get a new one. It's a new car again. It has all the newest technology that you want. It's under warranty the entire time you own it.
Yep. Plenty of safety stuff. Usually, if you have a lease, your mileage makes it to the point where you don't even need to replace tires or brakes or anything. You just do oil changes.
And sometimes those are even included now.
Yeah, and most of the manufacturers, if you stay within the same manufacturer when your lease is up, they give you a much better deal the next time around, like a much smaller down payment, or it gets cheaper as you do it. So I don't like one of our car friends actually leases a new RAV4 every 2 years.
Yeah.
Because he just wants a car he doesn't care about just to like have around.
Yeah, it's his daily driver.
Yeah, and it's so cheap for him to be able to just have this car to go to work. It's like a base model 4-wheel drive RAV4 costs him like $189 a month or something stupid like that.
Yeah. I mean, and then it's totally different when you're a car enthusiast like us, because like I've talked about it before. If you own old cars to daily drive, you kind of have to own like two,
A couple, yeah.
because you kind of rotate through them.
You need a backup car when breaks.
Yeah, like when I'm doing stuff to the Montero, I have the WX to drive and vice versa.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And as car people, we wouldn't even turn down an O2 Prism because those Corollas are a fun little chassis, and you could have a fun little autocross car or just a car that's a fun little backroad car with a set of sticky tires and a stock Prism with a 5-speed. So we'd be fine with that. But for a non-car person, I don't usually recommend it unless it's financial.
oh, and also,
Or like a kid for their first car.
yeah, here's the other thing. Don't go to like one of those used car dealers that's selling a 150,000 mile car for like
don't do that
huge money.
ever.
That's a waste.
Yeah.
It's a total waste. Don't do it.
Nope, don't do that ever.
You're better.
If your options are $1,500 old crappy car or buy here pay here lot, buy the $1,500 old crappy
yes,
car.
absolutely.
Never buy a car from a buy here pay
Absolutely.
here lot. Yeah, because you get upside down so fast on those.
Exactly. Yeah. Find, if your credit's not great, just find someone you can co-sign with or something.
Or buy
Just-
a cheap
or
car.
buy a cheap
Yeah,
car.
don't even go like buy a cheap car. Buy the cheap beater, save some money, fix your credit. It's not that difficult to fix your credit.
No, it's not.
This is a different podcast, but fix your credit and then buy a nicer car. But yeah, you're not going to do yourself any favors by buying from one of those shyster car lots nowadays because they just turn cars over so fast, and you miss half a payment one time, and your car's gone, and they sell it to the next guy at 19% interest. So just stay far away from those, unless they have a super cheap car in the lot that you can buy cash.
Yeah, exactly.
Never finance through one of those guys.
All right. Next Facebook question. Joe Davis. If you could choose any form of motorsport to have a dedicated vehicle for, which would it be, and what vehicle would you choose? We may have answered this before. We'll do it again.
I don't know if we have.
It seems familiar, but I mean, the obvious answer is rally.
Yeah, that's obvious. But that comes from our background, obviously, and it also comes from both of us like to have the option to drive our cars on the street. And I have that thought, I think you do too, where it's I'm spending this much money on something, I want to be able to get in it and go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I don't want to also have a dedicated tow vehicle and a dedicated trailer and all the other things that go around it.
You do if you're going to races, but I know what you're saying.
I don't know. We had our previous guest who drove his rally car from here to Canada, rallied it and drove it
That's
back.
true.
So I think that's kind of the way I would want to do it.
Where you live now, you could have a desert racing vehicle.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be pretty cool. You
For
could have
sure.
you could have a pre-runner or a Baja Beetle.
Baja Colt.
Yeah.
I mean, I have that rusty Colt in the yard, and I was thinking the other day, just put like a 4-point roll bar on the back and lift it a little bit with some tires and just go beat on it in the wood in the desert.
Yeah. I mean, I guess a desert vehicle would be an option for you.
Yep, for sure. I can just really turn off the highway in some places and just go bomb down some dirt paths. So
I would, it'd be pretty cool to have like a dedicated track car and then like the time to go to all these different tracks.
But again, I'd still want to keep it street legal, I think.
Yeah.
I just have that thing where if I'm spending the kind of money, I want to be able to do whatever I want with it. I want to be like, oh, I'm going to take the race car to Cars and Coffee tomorrow. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me. Maybe
Yeah.
because I've never had like a ton of extra money.
Yeah, a rally car makes the most sense because they are street legal, so
Yeah.
you can go do stuff with it, and then you can go to a car show with it.
Yeah.
Like a Spec Miata is not street legal. It probably could be,
You're right, could be.
but it's unlikely. So, yeah, I guess.
Maybe if I came from a different financial background where like money was never an issue,
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, I'll have a dedicated vintage race car.
Yeah. So
but I just have a problem with it.
the default would be rally car, vintage rally car. There you go.
Yeah, again, if anybody does ever know of a old competition used Colt, or actually any old Japanese car, but specifically a Colt, really, I would actually be interested in buying one of those at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I know of a couple that are in the community, but nothing for sale.
All right. Cool. Let's see.
I think we have Instagram questions as
That's
well.
it. All right.
Instagram.
We'll go through the order that I've got them in here. The period gearhead period project. A lot of us got our starts with mods. Go big or home, right? Why do you think so many of us are shifting more towards stock these days? See also experiences over mods.
I mean, that's the answer.
Yeah, I think everybody can have at least one wild build or engine swap or something.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can probably only stomach once doing it because it's probably expectations versus reality. You're like, this is going to be awesome. And then like 2 years into it, you're like, this blows.
I just can't wait for this to be finished. I want to drive my car.
Yeah, I've spent so much money, so much time. And then sometimes it has a lot of teething issues and it's not great right out of the box.
So I think another factor in this is newer cars are that much better than they used to be.
Exactly.
So you can go down and plop down a big down payment on my least favorite brand new Dodge Charger or Challenger or whatever, and you have a 12-second car out of the box.
Right.
So you don't need to build this crazy build to get to a 12-second car. You know, everybody used to start with, 14, 15-second quarter-mile cars or cars that pulled 0.74 Gs, but now a brand new car out of the box will annihilate any old car out of the box.
Right.
So-
but even if you're buying an old project car,
But now buying an old project car
It's-
isn't about making a race car. It's about getting back the experience from when you were younger. When I was in high school, I really wanted a Rabbit GTI, but I couldn't quite swing one with the other car that I had. I'd like to buy one now, and you're going to go out and find the nicest stock example you can, and then you're just going to drive it and enjoy it. You're not looking to build a hot rod out of it anymore.
right. But that probably comes from age too. I don't
They
know
could.
if as a young person you'd be into more doing stuff. But I definitely like the idea of just doing stuff to a car.
Well, it's like
and-
what I'm doing with the Eclipse that I have. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing tires and suspension, minor stuff to make the car a little more enjoyable and to replace worn-out parts,
Yeah.
and just enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to modify the suspension, but not because I have this, desire to build a race car, but because the parts have worn out anyway, and there's better componentry available now.
Yeah.
So I might as well just upgrade it when I'm doing it. But I'm not looking to take the whole car apart and make a big turbo monster out of it.
Exactly. Or it's a
So-
little easier to do like the detail work to stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but again, I also still in the back of my brain have all these crazy build plans for everything in the world. But
I still want to undertake. I still haven't done. I helped with the engine swap in the Golf, and I'd like to do an engine swap on a vehicle that
yeah,
I own.
that was a simple engine swap comparatively to some. Like, I say simple, it wasn't simple, but it was like you're going from a 1.8 liter four cylinder to a 2 liter four cylinder.
The architecture was similar.
Architecture's the same. You're not going from a 4-cylinder rear-wheel drive car and swapping it to like an LS swap or a Volvo with a 5-cylinder turbo or something like that. You're not building a hot rod out of it.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to do is a 5-cylinder into an older Volvo.
Yeah.
Because that'd be super fun.
Yeah, that's your build, and I really want to do a 4G63 in the Blue Colt.
Yeah. So those are things. But again, when we go to do those, I would still actually keep the engines pretty darn close to stock.
Yeah,
And
you're
not
doubling
do-
the horsepower without taking the engine apart.
Yeah, and not do giant crazy turbos. Literally
Yep.
just try to do it as if the vehicle was swapped OEM this way.
Right.
Where you get out of control is when you start doing all the different speed parts. And
Right.
it's like gets kind of crazy. You could do them later if you want, but like
Well, that's my thought with the Colt. Is the Colt is under 100 horsepower, but it weighs 1,900 pounds or so. The 4G63 goes in there. Factory stock, those are like 150 horse-ish.
yeah.
So I'm already almost doubling the horsepower.
Mhm.
And then if you did a freer flowing exhaust and you did just a dyno tune on the
Yep.
car with like an EZM link and a set of cams or something, you could make that thing make 180 horsepower without even thinking about it, and it would still be a nice, reliable daily car with 2.5 times the horsepower of the original. You don't need to go crazy.
I'm not saying you shouldn't build a hot rod car with all the crazy parts. That's totally up to you. But what you got to weigh is whether you want to be able to have fun with it pretty quickly, or
Building experience versus driving experience.
yeah,
And also, if you have the means, I think it makes sense to have an interesting, like you have your daily driver and you have your project car.
right.
But if you're like a genuine, real car guy that likes to drive and build and everything, you should probably have a second like weekend car that's done and you just use it.
Right.
Because it's really nice right now. I can go to Cars and Coffee tomorrow. I can take my Colt, even though I have like my Galantis part or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then it's like, then you get project fatigue and you're like, oh, I want to buy this other thing
Yeah.
because it's pretty close to being done. And then stuff just spirals out of control.
And then you wind up in my position with
Yeah.
way too many cars.
And that's the other thing. Yeah. You got to stick with one at a time.
Yeah.
So this is all stuff.
Where
that
were
we-
you with this podcast before I started buying all these scrap cans?
Hey.
Telling me what to do. You never stopped me once.
I
You're
don't
always
think-
like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go pick it up.
I don't think you ever listened anyways.
Probably not.
All right. I'm going to skip to a shorter question, and then we'll do the other ones. Throttle by cable. Probably already answered. Probably already answered this, but if not cars, then what?
Honestly, I have no idea.
You have no idea?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really like you're more into photography.
I was thinking about this. I was like, it would probably be photography. Well,
Yeah.
strictly photography, because that's a pretty big hobby in itself. It's probably my second. It's definitely my second
Yeah.
favorite hobby.
I've always been into cars, obviously, since birth. But like before I got my license, I was big into riding bikes.
Yeah.
I used to do a lot of miles on a bicycle, so maybe I'd be more into riding bikes, which I'm getting back into now anyway. So
Probably
maybe
be a
that
big
would have
mountain
been,
biker.
yeah, maybe that would have been something I did more. Maybe probably would have been good for me because I'd be healthier. I mean, are motorcycles a default for not cars, or is that kind of the same category?
There's some people that are only into motorcycles.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably. Yeah, I really don't have a good answer for it. Like, I'm not a sports guy. I can't be a sports guy, and like, I get sports. I understand sports. I know the rules of the game. I can watch a football game and know what's going on.
So bikes.
Yeah, bikes and maybe motorcycles if it counts. And I'd probably still be casually into photography, or at least taking pictures and never sharing them like I do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a
probably what
tough
it'd be.
question because I often have that same question in like my daily life, where I'll meet somebody who's not into cars. And I'm like, what does this person do for fun? And then the answer is probably whatever they want because they're not tied down to these cars.
That's
But
true.
I don't like. I'd probably be big into exploring, like vacationing, because I'd like to see things now. I'd probably do a lot more like mountaineering and hiking and more healthy things because I enjoy the thoughts and ideas of that stuff. But I'm fat and lazy because I'm a car guy,
Yeah.
so I don't do that stuff.
All right. We're getting chastised for this one. Few drop.
Yes.
I'm told that's how it rhymes.
By him.
Rhymes with huge.
Yeah,
Few
huge.
drop.
Huge.
Huge.
Rob.
Uh,
Huge.
if you got given a 240Z with a small block Chevy 327 already swapped in, but didn't want an iron block carburetors unless it's a Datsun inline six with SU carbs, what would you do? Asking for a friend. And he says also we need to have a auto off topic Arizona meetup.
Which we'll have.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about it the other day.
Yeah, we can plan that out. That's off the air.
Yeah.
All right. So you got a 240Z.
So he was given a 240Z that has a 327 carburetor motor in it.
Yeah, which was
Which
probably
I-
done in the 80s or 70s or something.
I think it's rad. Like
kinda
it's
cool
it's
now.
an era appropriate build. It
Yeah.
might not be efficient. It might not be much more faster than
Honestly,
the car was.
what I do now, throw one of those Holley
EFI kits.
EFI kits on it
Yeah.
and just make it run better that way.
I mean, the 327 is a cool little motor. They rev pretty quickly for an old iron block V8.
Yeah.
You know, old small block Corvettes from the 60s are like neat little fun revving cars, and that's kind of what you have there. But I think with maybe modify, I would definitely keep the engine in there because it's there. It's not like you're cutting up this car to put a V8 in it. Somebody already did.
Yeah, I'd get rid of the carb. Throw a Holley kit on there.
So I'm assuming the car's a manual transmission. If
I would
it's
hope so.
not, get rid of whatever junk they put
Make
behind
it
it
manual.
and put at least an old Muncie 4-speed or a 5-speed or whatever behind it with a nice, pretty lightweight flywheel, and maybe just change the cam to make it a little more higher end power.
You can put better heads on it.
Yeah, better heads and cam and the Holley EFI setup with a nice light flywheel.
And then make like an exhaust that looks like a stock exhaust come out of it.
yeah, and isn't super loud, but has a nice little. I don't know. I think of. I grew up with my father. Had a '63 Corvette. That was a '63 Corvette convertible, and it had a 327 with a 4-speed. And I just remember the way that car just sounded, and the way it drove, and how he shifted it, and how it was just like, to me, that car as my youth defined sports car. And I think if I had that experience in a Datsun Shell, I'd be pretty cool with that. I mean, the obvious answer is LS swap it. That's the obvious answer, right?
Yeah, because the mount should line up.
Pretty much. The basic general area.
I mean,
you know it'll fit.
That's a lot more cost. So I just do
That's what I'm saying. That's the obvious answer. That's the answer. That might be the answer he's looking for. He might be looking for just not recognition, but like affirmation that his idea is correct.
Affirmation versus information.
Yeah, exactly. But I honestly wouldn't do that if the 327 runs. I mean, it's a tried and true engine. They make tons of speed parts for it. You don't need a ton of power in a Datsun because the car only weighs 2,300 pounds.
I hope the car's orange.
Pounds. I think it's like a primer brown.
Okay.
I don't know what the original color was. I'd have to look. But, no, I'm down with that. And being as that I'm local, I'd love to go over and help play with that thing.
Cool. All right. What else we got?
Yeah, it's kind of a burgundy.
Bike Paint Repeat asked about the picture. Is that a 164? And yes, it is. It's a picture from the Rhode Island Mini Melee. That's kind of a funky looking car, the 164.
It's very stodgy.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's cool because it's stodgy, but it can be made to like handle.
Why don't you read Yeti Overland's question, because that one's for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got it pulled up. I get it right here.
Oh, yeah. No, I got it right here. Latest recording method sounds great. Thank you. Well, EFI TDI two-rotor, which obviously is a take on my TSI SS350.
I kind of like it.
Show me his German side when he drives it back to Arizona. I mean, if he's talking about the German Eclipse, then yes. If he's talking about the obvious German jokes and German side, which I'm not going to get into, then no. Also, ditch hookers and racing hangers should overland out sometime.
I know Jordan will go back to Colorado anytime.
Yeah, for sure.
Drop the hat.
You should too, because it's amazing.
Yeah.
Jordan actually talked about that, about him going out there, and I would just drive up and meet him there, because it's like, a day's drive.
Yeah, we can work on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's all the questions we had, right?
So yes, that would be... you can definitely hang out and take a look at the Eclipse at some point. And we apologize greatly to Fuge Rob for getting his name wrong for getting his name wrong for so long. But
Fuji Rob.
it is apparently Fuge. So his name is Rob Fuge. So we were butchering his last name by saying his screen name wrong. So I think when I meet you in person, Rob, I'm going to shake your hand and say, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Fuge." But
Fuji-san.
we will try to get that right from now on. I promise. But yeah, that is all the questions for today.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else?
No, we can't even promote Cars and Coffee because by the time this goes live, it'll already happened.
Yeah, just the next one.
I don't know when that is.
I can see if I can look it up real fast.
Should I just hum the whole time to keep people
No, I'm
entertained?
pulling it up here. Southern New Hampshire Cars and Coffee. The upcoming events are Sunday, September 15th, 9 a.m.
Excellent.
Same place, same channel.
They can go visit you there because I will not be there.
Actually, I will not be there as well for other reasons.
When is the date?
The 15th.
Of October?
Of September.
Oh, yeah, September.
But yeah, so it's still going on, and check it out. Anything else? As always, you can follow us on Facebook, Auto Off Topic Podcasts, Auto Off Topic on Instagram. It seems like Facebook changed their algorithms again because stuff's getting buried. Oh well, it is what it is. You can follow me on Instagram, Race to Anger, and EFI TDI 2-rotor TSI.
It's actually TSI SS350.
Okay. You can follow Brad on Instagram. As always, keep your cars analog and aim for the roses.